morning, depending on where you are on the continent. And my name is Bora Varliacı. I'm an industry consultant, and I'll be moderating the panel discussion today afternoon. Today, we are going to talk a little bit about digital infrastructure, which is a key foundation stone of technology evolution and advancement on the continent. So it's a very interesting and important topic. And I'm expecting a very interesting and engaging conversation with our guests who are industry leaders dealing with infrastructure challenges of the continent on a day-to-day basis. So I would like to make a very brief introduction, and then I'll request them to introduce themselves and their interest on the topic. We have Mr. Razvan Ungureanu, who is the CTO for Airtel. We are joined also by Jeff Schumacher, who is the Commercial Director of Helios Towers. We have Vino Govender, who is the Executive for Strategy, Mergers and Acquisitions and Innovation for Dark Fiber Africa. We have Keelan Delaney, who is the CEO of Delmec, and Steve Harris, who is the CEO of Paradigm Infrastructure. Welcome all. I'd like to begin our conversation by asking our panelists to make a short introduction of their companies, their activities, and their interest in terms of the digital infrastructure developments on the continent. May I start with you, Razvan?
Yes, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Razvan Ungureanu. I'm the Group CTO of Airtel Africa. So Airtel Africa is very known. We are a mobile network operator. We operate in 14 countries across Africa. More than 120 million customers. We are managing directly and indirectly more than 25,000 sites. So obviously we own a major infrastructure across Africa, and any evolution of the infrastructure and the way that we can support our customers, it's a very interesting topic for us. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome. Keelan, if I continue with you.
Good day, everybody. I'm Keelan Delaney, Delmec CEO. I founded Delmec 20 years ago to concentrate on telecom tower infrastructure. In Delmec, we partner with tower owners, both MNOs and towercos, and we help them to optimize value of their tower assets. We've a deep structural engineering expertise and experience. We've visited more than 200,000 sites internationally. This has enabled us to see and provide a smarter way to build and to manage tower infrastructure. We operate in Europe, Asia, and Africa. In Africa, we came to the continent in 2008 and 9. We started to work with towercos at that stage as they expanded across the continent, and we've expanded across the continent with them. So we have a deep understanding of the market in Africa also. I'm delighted to be part of this panel here today. Thank you.
Welcome, Keelan. Thank you. Stephen?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. So I'm Steve Harris. I'm the CEO of Paradigm Infrastructure, which was a company I started last year. So not quite as long a track record as Keelan's got there. But I've been involved in towers around about, probably about 25 years now. Most recently with American Tower in the EMEA region, where I was their CEO. And prior to that in the UK with Crown Castle and National Grid Wireless. Paradigm's very much focused on Africa. It's a startup tower company. We have a collection of a team that's very strong in starting and operating assets in different markets, both in Latin America and in Europe, and also in Africa. So our real aim is to grow the business and to become an established towerco, providing, I think, slightly different services, the traditional tower services, but hopefully with a degree of flexibility that one comes with a new business.
Thanks, Steve. Welcome. And Jeff?
Jeffrey Schumacher. I'm the Commercial Director for Helios Towers. Helios is a Pan-African tower owner and operator. We're publicly listed on the LSE since last year. We own and operate over 7,000 towers, and we're present in 6 countries across Africa.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Vino?
Hi, thanks, Bora. My name is Vino Carpenter. I'm the Executive for Strategy, M&A, and Innovation at Dark Fiber Africa, which is the pioneer and the predominant wholesale open access fiber provider in South Africa. We work a lot with tower guys in terms of, especially the MNOs, in delivering fiber to the towers, with operations in South Africa, now in Zimbabwe as well. So, good to be part of the panel.
Thank you, Vino, and welcome all again. I'd like to start discussion with regards to the current shift of 2G base on the continent towards 3G and 4G. We have seen an acceleration of this shift in recent years. Indeed, 3G connections at the moment representing more than half of the connections on the continent. 4G deployments have commenced, and yet, we are seeing the uptake of 4G services adoption of 4G services is still limited to a small user base. So with that in mind, probably Razvan, I would like to start with you, being a key driver as a major operator on the continent. What are your takes on this? What are the key enablers and challenges in front of 4G? And what do you also expect? Probably, looking into the panel, lots of infrastructure providers over there. What do you expect as a MNO from your infrastructure partners to advance 4G on the continent?
Thank you very much for addressing me. So first point that I would like to emphasize that we understood very early, so I'm speaking about 4 or 5 years back, that data is very important in Africa. So we took a position of leadership. So we didn't wait it to a first mover and afterwards to follow. We took a position of leadership in respect of investing in 3G and 4G. So I have already many than 4 or 5 countries that are the footprint of LTE. It's 100%, meaning 2G equal 3G equal 4G. And our intention in the next financial year is to finalize almost all the rest of the country. Obviously, there are some exceptions if you take sites in the very rural, remote rural areas or very isolated where the business case is not flying. So we'll evaluate that. But I would say as a generality, where there is a solid business case, we will do it, and we want to do it in a very consistent way. Because we saw a huge need for data and we have to sustain that need of the customers. So what are the challenges? Challenges are always about, I'll not say the rollout itself is a challenge, but it's more about the transmission availability. Because if you want to do 4G seriously and be ready for 5G, you have to increase in a dramatic way the bandwidth and the resilience of that. Moving towards IP, so upskilling the people. It's totally different moving from the classical TDM to the IP. Moving towards SDN, that's the next step, which is what we are doing now, and preparing basically for unlimited bandwidth, what I'm calling. So end-to-end, from the customer up to the landing point in internet, which is connectivity towards probably London, Johannesburg, or other points there where we are connecting to internet. So richness of connectivity in fiber, resilience, challenges of deploying transmission, I said already. In respect with my partners, I work with all the tower cores. As you know, Airtel, it's a big partner of the tower cores. The biggest challenge that we have is that piling up technologies increase obviously the tower load. So we are reaching up the limits of 125 kgs that we have on top of the tower. Is pushing us beyond the power slabs that we have. And obviously that is providing us an increase on OPEX. Obviously, we don't want to say that we want to roll out to zero increase, but we like a closer collaboration with the tower costs in respect to transparency on power consumption. What's the impact of modernizing the network in terms of power consumption? Because sometimes I made modernization, I got 20-30% power consumption reduction, and I didn't see that on my bill directly. So somehow we have to link our success, because if I'll be successful, the tower will be successful. And I'm looking forward for a debate how we can stimulate my rollout in such a way that I get more rollout, more footprint. Obviously, that will be more business for the tower costs. And it's a win-win relation. A second point that I will need is regarding build-to-suit. I still struggle a lot to have build-to-suit available. I think the tower cores should be more fitted to deliver in time and in quantity the amounts that we need in terms of build to suit. And obviously, we have to engage and have open discussion regarding that, how we can do it in a better way for both parts.
Thank you, Razvan. I mean, you mentioned very interesting points in terms of challenges, in terms of tower built the suite to expand the footprint, obviously. You talked about getting the tower loads and challenges in terms of accommodating more equipment. I guess, I mean, it goes into power challenges already existing on the continent. And you mentioned about transmission, which talks more fiber and more fiber reach to the towers as well. With that said, I think probably I would like to turn to other panelists, probably starting with Jeffrey, with yourselves, in terms of how do you prepare as an infraco to meet those challenges and requirements by the MNOs, both from an infrastructure point of view, but also, I mean, commercial evolution of your model that will enable that partnership to continue as the technology evolves with the MNOs.
Thank you, Bora. So at Helios, we continuously aim to improve our service offering for our customers, both in terms of power availability, deployment time, and then also in terms of cost. So we implement the Six Sigma methodologies towards continuous improvement, reducing waste within our ecosystem, deploying better structures for our customers, but also in terms of just reducing our overall ecosystem cost. We're in the process of deploying out rural solutions at the moment, which provide a network as a service entirety. So enabling the ecosystem providers to reduce the entire ecosystem cost in order to provide rural coverage and rural capacity for the end mobile consumer. So in each of our markets, we have continuous efforts to reduce the cost. As Razvan had mentioned, in terms of their reduction of power consumption and our ability to, as a tower co, pass through any reductions to the customer. We continuously work with everyone to have a win-win solution. Every situation is specific, but as a tower co, we envisage long-term arrangements with all of our customers that are win-win.
Thanks, Jeffrey. I mean, if I continue with you, we know you are more on the fiber transmission side, which has been a big challenge in terms of really expanding, particularly, areas beyond the metro or urban areas. Mm-hmm. How are you preparing? What are you doing to meet these new challenges introduced by the technology evolution?
Thanks, Bob. I just want to pick up on some of the points that Razvan also talked about, which is, to meet the demand for growing mobile data, it's not just confined to the metro areas. You got to, and especially in Africa, you got to reach those rural areas where you have population densities existing. Otherwise, we end up with building sites that are just island sites without connectivity. Having said that, the backhaul needs to be resilient and scalable, which fiber provides, right? In terms of latency, speed, that's what you kind of need. So, when looking, like you mentioned, when you start looking at, not just in South Africa, but in Africa and most other countries as well, how, the build costs to extend fiber to these areas to a single site or single customer becomes really unfeasible. I think this is where the tower players have a critical role to play in terms of aggregating multiple operators in an environment onto common infrastructure. I always talk about it, it's common demand or common infrastructure. So by driving the multi-tenancy aspect on the towers makes it more feasible to move to get fiber to a tower, to a site where you've got multiple customers on top of it. But in my opinion, that alone would not be enough, right? Because like Jeff mentioned, and he talked about developing a turnkey solution. In these types of areas, it's you're going to look at the total cost of ownership from a mobile network operator. Now we've seen examples of, and the one I can recollect now is MTN as an example that kind of looked at all its rural coverage provided by a third party, Parallel Access and Value, creating an open access WAN type of environment or WAN as a service. So, it's not just enabled by that, but the kind of business model needs to be relooked as well in terms of how you combine the different infrastructure requirements under a common solution that's shareable and scalable to the end user. So, that's something else that we need to look at. And the last thing is that, for this to happen, and I'm seeing it now, even when you start looking at, deploying in metro areas, common in-building infrastructure coverage as a service. Policy needs to be at a level that's supportive of, such business models, because what it does then, it creates it creates the platform for multiple infrastructure components to be combined on a single stack and be provided as a turnkey open access shared resource to mobile network operators, because at the end of the day we all are servicing mobile network operators, and that's the way those are the key points I would highlight. Business model, supporting policy environment, and infrastructure players coming together either through partnerships, JVs, M&As type of to serve the common customer. Because that's the customer that we look at. And when you kind of look at the bigger picture of infracodes being tower codes, the data codes or data center type companies, fiber codes or net codes, net companies, and now we're seeing the new emerging S codes, energy supply companies. Those are the server stacks that need to come together and be combined. And it's only natural progression for towers to come down into the fiber and the data and the ESCO space for fiber guys to move up. And I think with the assets already being there, the trick, the balancing act is how do we combine the assets from different entities into a common value proposition that meets the requirements of the mobile network operators.
It's very interesting indeed. I mean, you and Jeffrey both mentioned in terms of this infrastructure as a service in a more integrated manner almost, which, used to sit on the MNO's activity book in terms of what they used to do. Now it is becoming more infraco focused, which is a shared infrastructure that makes more economic sense probably on certain circumstances. So I want to get to that question, but first of all, I would like to ask Steve in terms of, as a new operator in this market against these established entities, how do you see you become a challenger or addressing some of these challenges on the market? So do you have a different approach? Do you think things can be done differently, particularly with the comments in mind in terms of this network infrastructure assets needs to come together, almost coming from Jeffrey and Bino?
Yeah, I do. I mean, to Razvan's point, and actually a good starting point is you've got to give the customer what he wants, and there's certainly an opportunity on the build to suit side where I think clearly there is an opportunity for newer towercos to challenge that. But back to your wider point, I think this is a really important aspect of where the tower industry is going, and that being that there's a technological drive, and that's putting different requirements on your site. So you're getting a different weight requirement. You're getting many more radio units, towers that need to handle a lot more equipment. At the same time, you're trying to you must support the customer in terms of their business model to make it more efficient. And I do think there's opportunities to work much closer with mobile operators. And based on my experience of not any particular towerco, but towercos don't always do that very well. And one of the advantage of I think we've been describing, if you look at companies like Dark Fiber Africa, the tower the site itself is a facility that needs to become more effectively utilized to make that commercial proposition better. So there are opportunities to look at things like, power is an issue. If you're going to bring fiber for the site, can we do shared ducting? Could you bring mains power to the site at the same time? And I think there's a lot a lot to be gained with the closer cooperation with the mobile operator, where you can genuinely save, because there is value actually there that's not being captured by anybody, but genuinely capture that value and share that equitably, which, you know, benefits all the people on this call, but the end user as well.
Thanks, Steve. I mean, it's interesting, and you know, I would like to continue with Keelan on your side. I mean, your thoughts on this topic, particularly given your global exposure in terms of other markets as well. Are there any, you know, lessons learned from other markets that can help to, you know, accelerate technology shift on Africa? And do you see also this expansion of the networks to new technologies, but also new areas, as we are still covering new areas, going a bit deeper in the rural in terms of your service offering? Does it, you know, represent an opportunity for you, or more of a challenge as accessibility becomes an issue on some of these sites?
Thank you, Bora. I think it's a challenge for us all. It's an opportunity also. What we see in Africa, an amazing statistic is that there's only 10% penetration of 4G yet in sub-Saharan Africa, and we've worked through that 4G rollout in other markets, and I think there's a long way still to go in Africa. We see the build to suit on the edge of the network, that trend continuing, and that expansion of the networks to continue. But we also see co-locations, and you know, the efficiencies that can be generated by co-location and by you know, MNOs coming together on towers, on TowerCo towers, to reduce cost and make it more efficient. I think those two trends are the key trends that we see, and I think that the major lesson we've learned is that this has a long way to go. There's still a lot of rollout here still to happen, and I think 4G is going to be with us for some time in terms of that actual work and those projects and that rollout. So I think that's our opportunity, but that's also our challenge.
Thank you, Keelan. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I'd like to pick on one point that you made in terms of 4G penetration or uptake being just 10% in the continent. That is quite important because still we are busy with these 4G deployments, but in meanwhile, we have this global hype of 5G coming through, and everybody's really getting excited. We have seen lots of trials happen on the continent and commercial launches as well in South Africa in recent months. With that said, obviously, I mean, 5G have quite a lot of use cases in terms of what you can do with this technology. Probably initial deployments are rather easier ones, just, you know, leveraging on capacity aspect, particularly around fixed wireless type of aspect, which can complement fiber reach where it doesn't exist. But going forward, obviously, I mean, when we talk 5G evolution in a more broader context in terms of ultra reliable, low latency networks that will enable automation, as well as some of the other mobility aspects, we are really talking about a large amount of investment that is still required, probably, that will come on a small cells as well as edge data centers point of view. So probably, Razvan, on your side, I mean, in terms of looking into 4G, still underutilized, and lots of investment went in there, and that 5G with, you know, huge bill coming through. Do you think, I mean, it is realistically expect 5G adoption on a mass matter in Africa in the short term? Or what are the timelines? What are your plans as Airtel driving this? Will you rather pick on the applications and, you know, have niche deployments, or do you see that 5G coming in big waves in anytime soon? You are just on mute, Razvan.
This will become one of my favorite topics because over and over in various conferences I'm asked about that. So first of all, I would like to clarify something. So our install base in 4G, today we are running around 70%. And we have intention in the next 18 months to close that gap to 100%. So we are pushing very hard on 4G. So 4G for us is much, it's a big reality. We are struggling with the installed handset base, which is around 20% across Africa. So 20%, only 20% of the people, they have a 4G handset. You can imagine what will be the situation regarding respect with 5G handset. So respect with 5G, I really think that we have a strong case regarding fixed wireless access. We have a few barriers. So a few barriers are around, let's call them, first of all, spectrum access. If I take a country like Nigeria, there is no 3,500 megahertz spectrum available. Just one point. So where to do for 5G in a consistent and good way? I can go to millimeter wave, but it's not so efficient. So spectrum and regulatory, that's one aspect. So lack of readiness from that front. B, this year it's a big question mark regarding the vendor landscape. So with everybody being very reluctant to invest in the Chinese suppliers, entering in a duopoly with just the European vendors is not a good policy. Everybody speaks about, again, it's a big buzzword, Open RAN, but Open RAN is not mature. If I take my operating conditions, when I have a hardware which is doing 100 times power cycle a day, operating 40 degrees, I would like to see which Open RAN vendor will deliver me a hardware which is able to stand in this operating condition. I offer myself to the open world, and actually I'll speak in AfricaCom about that. I'll offer my operations for any vendor being able to stand my test. When they'll pass my test, I'll say, yes, I believe in Open RAN. Until then, I'll not believe in Open RAN. So I give them 2-3 years to be ready. If you look, a lot of greenfield operations are starting in Open RAN. We are discussing about Rakuten, if you are discussing about Dish. And they are not so far a success. They are making a lot of noise because they like ecosystem to be engaged and activated, but it's not a success for the moment. If I take the Rakuten rollout, if I was doing it with the classical vendor, 5G rollout was finished long time back and generating revenues, not making noise around the solution. So that's another problem that we need to clarify and need to wait until we have a clear vision about that. Third, it's about the readiness of the infrastructure. We need a lot of fiber. The density of fiber is not there. We need to reach a ratio, at least every second site, every third site to be connected in fiber, if you really discuss about a reliable 5G connection. Data center to the edge, yes, I believe. I push data center to the edge for totally different reasons than 5G. I push it for resiliency reason. And that's why another debate that I have it, I'm very passionate about that. I don't believe in cloud in Africa, because you can't imagine the number of situations that I'm isolated from the cloud. So if I put any element of my infrastructure in the cloud, I'll be in isolation immediately. And I'm discussing about conditions when I have in a country 100 to 200 fiber cuts a month. And I reach up to have second, triple, four directions of resiliency on the fiber and still have fiber cuts. So until we don't fix in a consistent way that, we'll not be able to deliver 5G. Afterwards, it's about as well ecosystem in global beyond the RAN suppliers. I don't believe in NSA rollout of 5G. I really believe I really think that we need a standalone, and this just started this year. So I really believe that we'll have mature. I don't discuss Africa. I discuss overall. Beyond that, mature 5G rollouts will be as from next year. If except a few countries that they really want to be flagship, you don't see massive rollouts of 5G. Everybody's wait and see for the moment. That at least that's our opinion, and this is what we will be doing. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Razvan. It's really interesting, and kind of supporting my own thoughts as well. Vino, I mean, on your side, hearing this, and alluding to also your referring to your earlier comments in terms of the need for infrastructure to come together. Now, going forward, as much as timelines are a bit blurry in terms of where we get to that 5G, but C-RAN applications, centralized RAN applications are happening on 4G as well. That requires almost edge data center and fiber to work together. Do you have plans from the DFA point of view to bring these assets together or extend your fiber reach? Or are you going to wait for demand to build up before you move on? Well, how do you see your actions going forward on that?
So, Bora, we've always communicated quite openly our aspiration as a fiber co to use the fiber network that we have to pivot into adjacent infrastructure opportunities. To be specific, edge co-location as a service. even to the extent of, I mean, we've got close to 15,000 buildings connected in the metro areas, and a whole host, a significant higher number that's near networks, which means under 150 meters from the network that we can connect. So, it kind of makes sense that, we can also put up the network infrastructure to move into, in-building type of coverage solutions that require the in-building infrastructure, as well as the fiber backhaul which we have already. But to your point, let's be more specific around edge data centers, and we look at it purely from a co-location perspective. In densifying our fiber network that we built in South Africa, we had to build a number of what we call aggregation nodes. And the aggregation nodes, create fiber capacity efficiency. So we aggregate the access fibers on the aggregation node, and then the core fibers come out of that and come back to the core networks, and we take it through to the customer's network. But having said that, the aggregation nodes also serve another purpose, right? Where we provide dark fiber access services, we sell rack space in it. We sell rack space and power for call it our network guys our network partners or customers that put the active equipment to light up access services. By default, we're already positioned to an extent to be in that edge, and that's what we define the edge as. But having said that, it's a timing perspective, right? And we have to follow the lead from the mobile network operators. And I'll tell you why. 5G is a critical enabler of these types of use cases. So when we talk about enhanced mobile broadband, which is fixed wireless access to fiber, that's great, and that's the most that's the lowest hanging fruit from an opportunity perspective. But when you look at the use cases of massive machine-to-machine type communications and ultra reliable low latency networks, these use cases speak to 5G being a bearer, IoT networks also being the signaling. It's also, and whether that happens in an NB-IoT play from a mobile network operator, and the near real time to real time processing of low workloads that enable those use cases to run, which means that needs to happen right at the edge. So if you think about when the case of autonomous driving or autonomous transport comes into play, that needs to be ultra the latency needs to be like close to like zero, right? And in that time you would find that it's a timing thing, because we see that being 8 to 10 years from now, the view that we've seen from analysts such as Delta Partners. So while we have the facilities available, timing is important, because you only want to make the investment as close to when the use cases come about. However, when we look at other use cases on 5G, such as immersive content, so when you start moving, because MNOs, are investing a lot in other digital type of value streams. Digital content plays is pivotal to them. So when you start looking at those types of cases, where you're delivering immersive content, so content that's being consumed in a VR or AR format, that latency also needs to be very low, and also the bandwidth needs to be extremely high to accommodate for that. It's not like a YouTube video. And then you'd start looking at content caching needing to happen much more closer to the edge. And that we see, when we look at analyst reports in South Africa, that's like maybe 3 to 5 years away. Let's see how that goes, but we monitor that. But to your point, as a fiber provider, knowing that, these technologies enable these use cases in both the business and the consumer environment, and even VR is being used in the consumer environment and business environment as well. We gear ourselves being ready to say, ensure that we have the locations available, where we have pre-aggregation nodes or aggregation nodes, have a plan to scale that up to provide the co-location capacity for content caching or for cloud computing resources, mobile edge computing. So with cloud computing resources that move to the edge, and which is ultimately your mobile edge computing resources. Now and you have to also work with mobile network operators, because remember the mobile network operators already have some of those mobile switching centers and stuff and other type of facilities that become more freely available from a footprint perspective, because as they migrate to maybe some CLAN or type of
Sure.
facilities. So for us it's just to follow our customer, follow the market trends, ensure that we have the fiber network present, and just monitor it and just to gauge when is the timing to type of invest and execute on.
Thanks, Mino. I mean, I'm just aware of the time as well, but I want to give an opportunity for Jeff, Steve, and Keelan to, comment on this point. Probably, Jeffrey, continuing with you. In terms of, your plans to meet this becoming infrastructure needs together, particularly you also entered a market like South Africa last year, where you have a lower base of towers, with obviously intention to expand it. How are you gearing up for this infrastructure requirements going forward?
So we are seeing some demand in South Africa for 5G infrastructure. We haven't changed materially our product base for 5G, but they are smaller cell sites with antennas which are closer to the ground for our main 5G customer. Outside of South Africa, though, we're not seeing demand for 5G from any of our customers, nor any plans in the near to medium term towards rollout, for the reasons that Razvan had mentioned: lack of handset ecosystem, unsupportive regulatory environment for 5G rollout, and an uncertain demand for the investment. At the moment, we're seeing a large push towards 4G, which is what the end consumer wants in all of our markets.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Steve, your side, what are your thoughts in terms of this, infrastructure becoming closer together and 5G requirements, your plans over there?
I think in an African perspective, without taking too much time, I think it's very difficult. If you look at the requirements and the way that tower companies elsewhere in more mature markets have dealt with 5G, it's actually quite problematic. And you need fiber to a small cell, you need power to a small cell, and you need a commercial offering, which normally means that the fiber is going to be used for something else. So if you look, if you're in the markets of South Africa, maybe some other markets like Egypt in the future, yes. But if you're looking at sub-Saharan Africa, I think it's quite hard to bring that commercial proposition together. And maybe the demand won't be there for it either, actually, for a little while.
Thanks, Steve. Keelan, on your side, I think in terms of your service offering and products, are there any plans on expanding them to meet those new challenges?
I think, Bora, what we've seen, again, just like what others have said there, is that we see very little demand for 5G yet in Africa. Yes, in South Africa, there's some demand, but across the rest of the markets, we don't see much activity. I think, what we can bring to the table is just that to be aware of what we have seen in other markets, Europe and North America, is where when 5G comes, the towers need to be ready for them. It's a serious additional load to a structure, and it adds a lot of capacity, and we can, we're 2 or 3, 4, 5 years away from that now. We can be planning for that. I think it's something that to be aware of. We expected 5G to be on newer, smaller sites. What we didn't predict was the effect that it'd have on the existing infrastructure, because each 5G co-location is like an additional operator. So each operator that's already there is going to be adding a complete set of equipment to the tower. And I think it's something just to plan for and just to be aware of. That's yeah.
Thanks, Keelan. I think that is coming across from all the panelists that if I have to sum up with what we discussed, there is definitely more infrastructure requirements on the continent, particularly to move to 4G to start with. and that comes with already its own challenges, given that you still have to spend and expand. Yet on the consumer side, there are other challenges like end user device cost, digital literacy, and that limits uptake of those services. So commercialization of 4G already becomes a challenge in the short term. So 5G is a good hype, but and may have selected use cases in terms of fixed wireless where fiber is not available. But mass deployment of 5G seems to be quite down the line, at least 3 to 4 or 5 years. And it's a bit difficult to anticipate what the requirements are and invest at the moment on that large scale. Yet, I mean, everybody, I think, would be watching that space to see how the demand and deployments evolve. So with that said, I think that concludes the discussion, but I want to see if there were any questions from the audience before we conclude. Matt, if I turn to you on that.
Yeah, sure. Let me just jump into the questions here. One question here is around sort of infrastructure as a service and how that sort of works within the current regulatory environment in many countries where it may not be enabled. I'm not sure that's the right question, maybe for Jeff there, but is providing this more full stack service supported by regulators or no?
I can pick that up. It really depends on the different markets. In some circumstances, we will require a different license to offer more services from our towers. In particular, if we're owning radio equipment via Open RAN technology, we'll likely require a different license.
Bora, can I just add on that one?
Please.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, and the way technology is driving the shift in terms of how technologies get deployed and taken to market and consumed, warrants a serious look at regulations and how they are supported. So regulatory kind of review and reform is also something that needs to be, a policy reform needs to be looked at in terms of, is it supportive of getting the best out of these new technologies in the most efficient manner to the best benefits to stakeholders and constituents. And something I kind of came across early this year is when you look at ITU, and ITU's, always had a regulatory guideline, that was very telco ICT based, and they released a new kind of paper or guidelines on from a regulatory perspective, but it's more on regulating in a digital economy or a digital kind of environment, which is fundamentally different from, or when you look at the traditional way of regulating and policy development, to now the shift towards what should key considerations encompass in terms of regulatory and policy with digital advancement, digital economies, and digital pervasiveness being the driver of policy and regulation as well.
Thanks, Vina. Just, I guess, one last question, I suppose, for Keelan, just around the move towards greater uptake on camouflage sites and different, less large lattice structures in sort of dense urban areas. I mean, is that something that Dalmec have seen evidence for? Is there a greater proliferation of different site typologies now across them?
I think in South Africa, certainly we see that, but in the other markets, it's still deployment of your kind of standard site, standard towers and generator backup to the grid. But what we do see is that it's becoming much more efficient. We're looking for lighter towers, looking for more efficient solutions, looking for how we can save cost on deploying and delivering that. But what we haven't seen yet is the kind of street pole, street furniture deployment. We don't see that anywhere yet in Africa, and I think that will come. But I think, like Vino said, fiber is needed really for the deployment of that type of infrastructure. But again, I'm sure that will come in time.
Okay, I think that's it now, Bora.
Thanks, Matt, and I would like to thank you all for joining, both speakers as well as our guests who listened to this interesting conversation. I hope it was a bit of food for thought and give you a bit of different perspective to what's going on the market in terms of infrastructure demand. Thank you very much. I'm sure we'll be able to touch base with interested audience later on. Throughout Tower Exchange sessions in coming days. With that said, I would like to thank you again and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.